I was thinking to your debut, because I actually remember your debut. I remember a lot of people's debuts, but I remember yours because of you coming out with Trish. And I was like, man, when was that? And it's like 2005. I was like, oh my God.
I know.
I was
October 9th, 2005.
Yeah, like I was like 15 at the time.
Oh God.
So yeah, 2005. So yeah, let's go back to that. 2005. You're down at OVW, and you're getting training, and then I'm assuming you get a call or there's a meeting, and they're like, hey, we need you to come to TV. We're gonna pair you up with the women's champion, the number one woman in the company, one of the faces of the company. How does that sound?
It's kind of happened like that, but not really. I was supposed to debut. That was I'd already debuted with CM Punk, and it got pulled from TV and went back to OVW. So, I got the call like, hey, we need you to come to Raw. But I remember on that specific time, because when we had went away for like Christmas break, and, I had took an extra few weeks because I was kind of like in this like weird crossroads of like, I felt like at that time, like I had built my name up as a wrestler, and for females at that time, there weren't a ton of female actual quote-unquote wrestlers on the scene. But as far as in the independents and stuff like the business is now, where it's so strong in the women's division.
Well, yeah, you think to when you're training in 99. Between 99 and 2005, it's basically like Lita and Trish, and then it's, a couple people they got from WCW and that shut down. But in terms of
like Molly and Jazz, and
you
have some like legit badass wrestlers, but you also have, the girls who were more like eye candy. You had the Tori Wilsons and Dawn Maries and stuff who knew how to wrestle to a certain level, but that wasn't, and they never claimed like, hey, I'm a, legit like wrestler,
yeah.
Or is that what they wanted to do? They wanted to be a managerial role. But most women, when I broke into the business, they weren't training to be wrestlers, they were training to be managers, and that's what they wanted to do. I wanted to be a wrestler, and I'm like, I don't want to just be a wrestler, I want to be the best damn wrestler in the world.
I want to throw it down with the dudes.
Yeah, well, I just think that everybody's path is different, and that is what makes everyone unique. Everyone's had like a really great careers for themselves, in whatever avenue they've chosen, like as far as which way they wanted to take their character. And I don't blame people for perhaps not wanting to do the most physical part of the work, because it's hard. And not saying a managerial role, you have to know how to talk, walk the walk, and you still need to know how to take the falls. You just don't have to take them as often, So I get it. But I think at that time, I was like, really, it was that whole beginning of the diva era when I debuted. And because I had been brought up to debut a few times and then sent back home, and I was just kind of like in this weird, like, okay, well, maybe it's better if I don't know how to wrestle, or if I just don't, I don't know where I'm at right now, because I certainly don't want to transition into this trainer sort of role for the women who don't know how to wrestle. But I went home and I wrote up this crazy storyline, or this character, Mickie James, which it was Alexis Lurie at the time.
Yeah.
And it was the epitome of, when you would do these shows, and when we were talking about fandom earlier, it's like, it is a legit thing. Like, fandom, it can be, like, I've had some of the most amazing fans in the world, and I have had some of the zaniest fans in the world, and the craziest, and the scariest, and the most awesome. Like, it's like every level of the spectrum, right? When you think about the super fan, like the ultimate super fan, that's where I came up with this character, where it's like she legit pulled from every type of super fan that one could be, So, yeah, was in love with her idol. And at the time, like, I didn't realize they were going to do it with Trish, but that storyline was going to go in with Trish at the time, because when I originally wrote it, I wrote it with Lita in mind, because I had a relationship. I knew Lita. She was my friend, and she was, kind of like a guidance for me, because she really did help me so much in the beginning of my career. And even when I was first there in the run with Lita, and I had her last match with her to it. And so it's like, I had asked her if I could, because you don't want to just pitch an idea for somebody. It's like, hey, can I pitch this idea with, whoever the top guy? Let me pitch this idea with whoever, you know what I mean? So kind of asked Lita if I could pitch this idea. I was like, I have this really cool character idea, and I just want to know if I can pitch it with you. And she was a heel at the time, so it's like how that storyline would have been way different with her as that, role would have been. The dichotomy would have probably changed, maybe the history of my, like, not that I wouldn't have been successful or super successful, but would it have gotten over as much or had the same, end result, whereas WrestleMania, where the crowd kind of split, and because Trish was the ultimate babyface at that time. So when they told me they were doing it with her and putting me with her, and obviously we've morphed, everybody worked together to create this amazing roller coaster ride. But that's kind of where she spawned from, and it's crazy to have seen that come to life. And then when I think back and I go like, gosh, if I would have debuted on any of those other spots that I was supposed to, as devastated as I was, or feeling like second guessing myself, yada yada, in those moments. But would I have had the career that I had with the intro that I had, like coming in straight for the top female in the division, or and then being aligned with her in that storyline for 6 months straight in order to get myself recognized and put in a position that then transcended through the rest of my career.
Yeah, and it's an amazing character development because, wrestling, they try to retread old storylines, kind of reinvent it. And after that, they tried it a couple times. Like Rosa Mendez, I think was a fan that got pulled out of the crowd, and like that's how she made her debut. And Dana Brooke made her debut doing something like that with Charlotte. And AJ did the crazy gimmick for a while. But for you, it was just uniquely different at that time because we had never seen women kind of paired up that way, because usually the obsessed female fan was usually towards the male and not the female.
Right. Exactly. And it was one of those barriers that was kind of edgy and fun to press on, because it did, I think it toyed with different people's, whether it be their fantasies or their, even for females who are like, wait, like, that's just not, she's freaking weird. Like, at first it's like, well, yeah, she is just a nice girl. She's fresh. She's just excited, yada, yada. But then it's clearly these, like, little signs that shows that something's not all there. Like, she's a little bit.
She's a little unhinged.
She's a little too much.
Yeah. Well, what I love about your kind of career arc mostly is because, like you said, you come in 2005, and we're transitioning out of the women's division to the quote unquote Divas division. Then you leave, come back. We're getting out of the Divas division back into women's wrestling, and not even women. Like, you're even taking that classification out, and now women are being called, WWE superstars rather than, women superstars or whatever. So kind of how are those locker rooms different going from 2005, to 2019, and seeing that kind of evolution, reinvention back to an evolution?
The locker rooms are very different, I will say. It's not different in the sense of like it's not like the women desire more, from their matches and stuff, because I think that there was that desire all along. It was just, we had our own, they had their limitations. And mind you, like, I left in 2010, and then I still went on and maintained my name for myself and was having some of the best matches. I had a cage match with Lisa Marie Tara at the time. It's still the epitome, and I go, like, that's one of the greatest matches of my career. So I was able to leave and still maintain that, my name and my credibility, and then come back and see this. And I've seen it from a distance, the transformation. You come back, and there's no more Divas Championship. There's no more women's, the original Women's Championship, which myself and gosh, like, the lineage of that title, now it was, 2 championships and the NXT brand and the NXT Women's Championship, and just had grown, as far as the evolution of women's wrestling, I think, across the board. And it's pretty amazing, because now it's, like I say, like, when I broke in, there wasn't a ton of women training to be wrestlers, and now the landscape is vast with all these incredibly talented women who are training to be a wrestler.
You're not trained to be valets and managers anymore.
It's like trained to be valets, or everybody. There are some people who do train for those roles, but it's not just the women. But it's like, most women want to be in the mix. They want to be seen as on the same level as the men. And I think that in 2020, that's in a business that has been, it's a bit of like, it is entertainment, it is, but women kind of took a back seat, and we were considered more of a novelty act or the entertaining act of the show for so long, to now be headlining WrestleMania and be putting on these first ever matches that we would have never been considered to have.
If you look back to 2010, when you're about to leave, and you can see the transition, you kind of see the writing on the wall where it was, okay, we found all these women on Diva Search. We had all these competitions. So now we have this influx of, models and actresses that were turning into wrestlers. And that's kind of where the dip happened. And then you move on and go to TNA, where they're doing the exact opposite, where it's, yourself and, like you said, Lisa Marie, who was Victoria in WWE, and you got like Awesome Kong and people like that, where, the women's matches in TNA were almost overshadowing some of the men.
Oh, they were some of the best matches of the night. I mean, we had the Knockouts Championship and the Tag Team Championships at the time. So it's like, there was such a big division that was going on there. And the people, it's just funny because the wrestling business is so small. Like, this world is much smaller than we think. So if you're going to cross paths with some of the same people and some of the same circles throughout your journey, depending on, like, if this is your thing, if this is what you love to do, if you probably didn't want to be a wrestler or whatever, and you just kind of fell into this and you got to run at WWE, and that would have probably been it for you, and that would have been great. But if you, like for me, coming up in the business, and I just crossed so many of the same paths with the same people, whether it be backstage and tryouts, different companies, and so it's interesting to see that, your family or whatever in some aspects, and watch them grow through this whole journey. But yeah, I just think that at that point, that company was really, if you wanted to see great women's wrestling, that was where you tuned to. And then out of that inspired all these, underling kind of smaller all-women's federations, which you would have never really, way back there was Glow and WOW, but then there wasn't really a whole lot as far as just catered for strictly women's wrestling. And now there's a bunch. There's like Shimmer and Shine and which other one? There's a bunch.
There's a bunch.
Like, I don't want to go down the laundry list of all of them, but there is a bunch out there.
So in 2010, you leave and you get that TNA Impact schedule, which is less daunting than the one that WWE provides for their talent. So I guess that would allow you to focus on pursuing music, because the time commitment just isn't as great as it was once in the WWE.
Yeah, that was kind of, when I had already put out my first album. I went to Nashville, and I had only went with like these handful of songs that I had written just to record them, because, you think I was on the road a lot, and I just was like, I've done I've gone after everything in my life that I've always wanted to do except for this. I've always wanted to sing, and I write already, and I want to go see if these songs are any good. If they're terrible, that's fine. If they end up as a coaster on my mom's, for my mom's coffee in the morning, that's fine. I just want to do this because this is something that I've always wanted to do and have been scared to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to put yourself out there.
Got to. You have to. So, yeah, I released my first album in 2010, and ironically, that was when I left WWE. So it was really this growth period and transition period for me. And being that TNA at the time was based out of Nashville, it just I talked to Dixie, and then finally I was like, you know what? I still love wrestling, regardless if I can do it on the platform. That's where my dream was. I dreamed of being at WWE. Regardless, I think that I can really do some really great stuff here, and I do have friends here, and I know the girls there that I can put on some incredible matches that I wasn't probably fortunate enough to be able to put on, not because of the talent or any reason like that before. You know what I mean? So I really wasn't getting challenged in that aspect. And I did. And I came up with a hardcore country character and that music with Dale and Serge, and I love my entrance music there so much more. That's me. That's who I really am. Like, when you take and that's such a parallel character to the Mickie James that when I came in, the crazy fan character that then morphed into the babyface and, apparently wasn't as unhinged anymore. And then when and then I was a little bit more stable. I was on my meds. It was totally fine. And then to come into the hardcore country character, who I felt personally was more in line with who I was, really, just the volume turned up. And I did some great work there, and I had so much fun. And then so when after I had my son, and I really kind of had faced, I was like, you know what, I think I'm kind of done wrestling at that point. Like, I moved out to Florida. We had the horse farm with my husband, and we had the horse farm, and we were actually just going back to visit his folks over the holidays. And that's when I got the call if I would come, if I'd consider coming back and having that match against Asuka. And mind you, in that interim, I'd been gone from TNA for a couple of years, and I had kind of softly reached out to see if there was any interest or whatever. And I just kind of come to the conclusion, like, I didn't really want to go back to TNA because of where it was, stability-wise, not because of the locker room. I mean, there's still incredible talent there. And, I love Gail Kim. She's one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. She's just incredibly talented. And, all the girls there are busting her. But even still.
But TNA in 2016 was kind of a hot mess. I'll say it. You don't have to say it. I'll say it.
Yeah, 2015 and 16, I was just a bit like,
I was like, I better not. Actually, I was in the building for TakeOver Toronto. I had floor seats, TakeOver Toronto. You come back and you wrestle Asuka. And again, that was just, I was like, oh man, what great timing this is for me to be able to see you live. Because probably the last time I would have seen you live in Toronto would have been like the late 2000s. And TakeOver Toronto was insane.
It was insane. And I tell you, I was so nervous. And I wasn't nervous about the match. I wasn't nervous about Asuka is incredible. She's so talented. I wasn't worried about any of that. I felt I'm like, gosh, I just hope that the fans
remember you. Yes.
They remember and they receive me, because I didn't know the landscape of these fans now, whether there were, people who were knew exactly who I was. Obviously, some of the parents probably knew who I was in comparison. And I feel like that makes me sound older, but I'm really not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've been doing this since I was 18 years old. I've been I've loved this business. So yeah, it was crazy. And then I got such a good reaction, and it just validated, like, okay, like they do remember. And then we went out there and put on a hell of a match. Like, honestly, like one of my best matches. Another one of my, if I was to list my top 10 or whatever, it would definitely be up there and probably the top 4.
Absolutely. You had the energy in the building. Everyone was juiced for it. The takeovers in general are absolutely crazy, but especially takeovers in 2016, the first one in Toronto, and Canadian fans are bananas anyways.
It was amazing.
Fans probably don't know this, like the crazy ones probably do, but you're part of the Native American Music Hall of Fame. So that was back in 2017, and we're here on the Six Nations Reservation. That is where the station's located. So I kind of want to ask you, what is the importance for you to recognize that part of your heritage and being an active member in the Native American community?
I think that it's imperative. It's like, it's not just, our people are such a small nation. It is the minorities of minorities at this point. And I'm not even full Native, like I'm Native on my mother's side from the Mattaponi tribe in Virginia. And so it's like, I just remember, like, people have so many, growing up as Native and going to the powwows and the August meetings and, doing all these things as a child. And I remember dressing up. And I remember also the misconception entirely growing up. And to the point where you'd almost just laugh about it, because just people still think a lot of times that Indians are just bows and arrows, riding horses, bareback, painted horses and teepees and wigwams, and that's it. And it's just, I've also traveled the world enough to see so many different reservations and stuff like that. And it's just a lot. There's so much that people don't know about the people. And I just feel like they've been forgotten about so much, like, because they have the smallest voices and across the nation, both north and south of the border. So it's like, I feel like if for me, it makes me honored to be able to say I'm Native American and to be able to represent my people in a different light and bring the world up to 2020 what it kind of is to be Native American. And for me, I don't feel like it's a fair light, because I'm not like every other Native American out there. However, I just want people to kind of know or be aware that we're still here and we still have a voice. And there's a lot of changes and things that I think that should happen for the people, in my opinion.
So, knowing these things and being an active member and seeing, like you said, you've gone to other reservations, and so you've seen a lot. What kind of advice would you give to people who are looking for, those outlets? You pursued your dream twice, and for a lot of people on reservations, it's very hard for them to pursue their dream. So what kind of advice would you give?
I think that we often, it's not just cultural, and I won't say this, I'm saying this, it's not just a cultural mentality on the reservation. This is a worldwide epidemic. Like, people who, come from nothing, they feel like they don't deserve anything. You know what I mean? Like, you feel like for whatever reason, you have these dreams or aspirations and stuff, but for whatever reason, you don't feel like they're obtainable for you, or you feel like you don't deserve them, and that's absolutely not true. You know what I mean? You deserve everything that your heart desires. There's not a reason why that was put in your heart to want that thing if it wasn't a genuine, whether it's a talent that you're wasting by not doing it or whatever. So at the end of the day, like, the only person who can stop you, the only person who can really truly get in your way from achieving any of your aspirations, and the beauty is that we don't all want the same thing. I don't want to be a rocket scientist. I don't want to be a big time banker or on Wall Street or any of that stuff. Do not put me behind a computer ever. However, there's some people that want to be an art, an illustration designer and do work with this. There's so many people with different, massive, amazing dreams, that's why I think that they're all obtainable. You just have to set and focus and not get in your own way and not tell yourself that you're not capable of having it or don't deserve it.
Wonderfully said.
I grew up, I didn't come from a whole bunch, you know what I mean? I was a small town girl in the middle of nowhere, Virginia, and it wasn't like I grew up rich and I thought, like, oh, I can have the whole world at my feet. No, I busted my ass for everything, every little thing, and that was instilled in me in a young age. But it was also my mother, who she's the youngest soul I've ever known. Like, she's even younger in her soul than me. I mean, I can't help it. But she was the one who instilled in me, like, you can, if you believe it, you can really get anything you want. Like, she just made me have that validation that you can really have. And it's not like that she achieved all her dreams, but for whatever reason, that young, like, childlike spirit just instilled in me constantly that you can have whatever you want. Just believe it. Just believe it. Just believe in yourself. And even in those moments of doubt, that's who I would reach out to, because she would remind me of, like, look how far you come, look how hard you work. Nobody would say that you would have done this thus far, and I believe in you, and you need to believe in you. And that's just reigned true for me the whole time, and all the struggles in those moments of where this isn't going to happen for me, or those doubts, and it's like all those old cliches of the darkest before the dawn, or like, just when you're about to give up, that's when, you get the biggest moment of your life. And so I feel like you just can't ever give up or ever stop losing faith in both your dream and yourself.
I'm going to ask one last thing, because I don't want to keep you on for much longer. I know you got things to do, but I want to ask you, I was trying to think, I got to think of the nerdiest wrestling question I can come up with.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I had to go, and I was like, okay, if I had to ask her the weirdest, most unusual wrestling question, what would it be? And this is what it is. It's about ring attire, okay? I'm going to ask you about your ring attire, mostly because over the course of 15 years of seeing you on television, you have had probably the most scattered wrestling attire of anyone ever to be in the wrestling business. John Cena would rock denim shorts. Randy Orton's been rocking the same trunks for 20 years almost. But you debuted wearing a shirt and a skirt. You had wrestling tights. Sometimes you'd wear jeans. When you were in TNA, I'm pretty sure you just wore plaid and denim shorts. Sometimes it felt as though you were just like, just wear this today to the ring. What was your
this'll work.
What was your mindset when it came to ring attire, and why was it always all over the place?
Well, I don't see, in my mind, I go like, oh, it wasn't all over the place. Because I think about the character that I debuted as, the Mickie James, the psychotic girl next door, young, exciting, so happy to be here, first day on the job. This has been my dream forever. MPS, I'm in love with you, Trish Stratus. She was a little girl in her own mind. So her wearing those little skirts with the Converse and the little boots and the little fluffy things and the tied up shirt with her hair and like little ponytails and barrettes in her hair, that was who she was. She was trapped in that. She's still trapped in that childlike mentality. She wasn't a woman. She was a good wrestler. She was a great athlete, but she was a girl.
Okay.
So when I transcended, or when I started to turn babyface after the thing, after being there, I'm like, I kind of felt like I needed a switch and I needed a change up to go from the skirt, because they didn't want, wasn't playing that crazy character, because now I'm a babyface, so I wasn't being crazy anymore. And since I wasn't doing those types of vignettes or things, and I just kind of lost that part of my character, it didn't make sense to continue if I'm going to cut more like serious promos or be a little bit more stern or whatever, and not have those little tweaks in my attitude to keep wearing the skirts. You know what I mean? So I went back to my bell bottoms, which is what I used to wear back in Ring of Honor and like on the independent scene prior to doing all that. And then prior to coming to WWE. So I went back to those with my emblem on the side that I'd created way back then, that star. And then I was like, and then towards the latter part, I was like, I need something a little edgier, like, and everybody's wearing tights and their shorts with straps and kick pads and stuff. And I was like, I want something just completely different and away from the bell bottoms, because I was trying to get a little bit more. I think what I wanted to turn heel, and I always felt like WrestleMania was the perfect time to like change your gear anyway. And so I'd already started thinking of the cargo pants with the same kind of tops, but just kind of more cargo pants. So I thought, these will look different, and they're not the same as what everyone else kind of is wearing, because everybody was just getting their tights made. I think that was my goal, was to not look like everyone else.
Oh, that is a given. I just remember watching, even when they put out the video games, right? Every year the video game would come out, and the Mickie James character in the video game was always look drastically different than the year before's, because they when they create the game, they pick one attire that you wore maybe like once or twice during that time frame in which they were making the game, and that was the one that you would have in the game, and you were always I guess there's a method to the madness, but as a viewer, just like, what? Like, even TNA, I guess TNA made sense because of the hardcore country thing.
TNA made sense for me because, and that was the easiest gear I ever had.
Just wear boots and shorts.
Oh my gosh, I'm like, can I go back to that? Let me just go back to hardcore country. It was so, because you could just find cut off shorts or to, make your own. And a lot of times I would buy the crystals myself in my hotel room and just sit there and throw some crystals and bedazzles on my shorts so they sparkled up. I didn't have to go out and buy these like legit like wrestling boots and custom boots and wait for them to get made and sent to me and make sure that they fit right and all that. No, I could just go to the store and buy a cool pair of boots and go out there and just be hardcore country with my flannel. And I would still get my logo done on the back of the flannel or fun different shirts. Or have my logo kind of thrown on the shorts somewhere. So I still always try to maintain that like piece of the puzzle in every single gear except for that beginning character.
Okay.
Because I didn't wear my logo for the Mickie James I didn't wear that at all, and it wasn't until I switched back to the bell bottoms. But since that point, it's been on pretty much every single one of my gear.
You're really a trendsetter, because you got to think, now there's a lot of guys out there rocking jeans and tank tops to the ring.
There are. But they don't look as good doing it.
Of course.
I'm joking.
All right. So you are currently kind of rehabbing a knee injury. You're doing a little bit of commentating. We're 20 years into a wrestling career. How much more time realistically do you think you have in a wrestling ring?
I don't know. It's hard. I say this because I am 40 and I have been doing this for 20 years. But when you look at the scope of the picture, I'm not the oldest female on the roster, nor am I close to the oldest person on the roster. I mean, majority of the male roster is in their 40s.
Yes.
Or at least most of the top guys are in their 40s, latter 40s as well. So it's like, well, it's not that aspect. It's more about where do I feel like I'm going to fit in and kind of in the landscape. And I am rehabbing this injury, and I've been doing commentating. We've been doing main event myself with Byron Saxton, and that's been fun. It's been interesting, especially while I'm out anyway, because I think that it just gives me. I always say that you can never know enough. Like, you can always learn. So it's just given me a different capacity and a different way to watch the show that I really hadn't done before from a commentator's perspective. I've always only viewed the product from a wrestler's mind and from a creative mind, as far as how I would perhaps do the matches differently or how I would do a character differently. Like, that's where I feel like I click on things. So to sit back and then analyze it from more of a commentator's perspective, it's been a challenge for me. And I think that it's a lot more difficult than people think, because they don't realize all that's going on up there. Like, you have people in your ear, those headsets, people are talking to you because you have to cut to commercial breaks, and you have to put over a sponsorship, and you also have to not miss any of the key elements of the match, because that is the priority, and it's like all these things and checklists. I'm like, oh gosh, but thank gosh I have Byron out there like leading the charge, because he's amazing. And so, yeah. And then in the meantime, I mean, I think I'm set to be back. Like, technically, I'm set to be back in sometime in March, April. But I don't know. I'm like, I definitely want to wrestle. I still want to wrestle right now, but I also don't want to wrestle forever. So if I'm just going to do something really awesome and then maybe wrestle for, I don't really know. I don't want to put a timestamp on it. I don't want to say, oh, I'm only going to wrestle for 5 more years or 3 more years, because I've just learned that nothing ever goes according to plan.
Hey, Trish just came back and did a 5-star match against Charlotte back in August, and she's been retired for a while, so
yeah,
never say
exactly.
never.
Exactly.
And hey, March, April, that's an interesting timeline. There's usually a big event happening that time of year.
There is a huge event happening. However, it's like I still have to go. Like, I've just seen the doctor, but I'm actually doing really amazing in my recovery. It's been really fascinating, because this is the first time I've ever even had surgery in my entire career.
Really?
Like, I've had injuries, like small injuries, but nothing that has kept me out or sidelined for this amount of time, and I've never really had to go underneath the knife. Especially go through the rehab. Like, I've done rehab for like a torn groin, or like my separated shoulders, my poor little weak shoulders, or sprained ankle. So I've had to do like stuff for those, but it's never been something like, okay, you just completely tore your ACL, which, mind you, it didn't even hurt. And I thought that I just tweaked my knee when I did it. And even when the doc was looking at it, he's like, I think you might have partially torn your meniscus, but are you sure it doesn't hurt? And I'm like, no. I'm walking around on it with heels on and everything. And it wasn't until I got my MRI and they're like, yeah, you don't have an ACL anymore. And I'm like, oh, that's good. That's great.
Great news.
Great news. Thank you. But it's been interesting, because I've been able to sit and chill and kind of reevaluate, and then now go into this other role, which I would have never anticipated myself going into. And I don't know. We'll see what the future holds.
Well, I appreciate you giving me this much time today and talking with me about all things wrestling and music and indigenous stuff as well. So, Mickie James, thank you so much for this interview today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.